Well, narcissists love projection. They're learning the language to weaponize their victims with. They lack empathy because they can't hold themselves accountable to anything. It's actually a fragile ego. It's a deep fear and shame about who they are.
Welcome back to Let's Talk Relationships, everybody. Today, we are going to be talking about something that I'm sure you've probably heard of and you may be familiar with, but not totally clear on what it really means. And that's narcissism, whether that is going to be in your dating relationships, in your family, in friendships. I want us today to uncover the red flags that we all should be looking for when it comes to narcissism. Joining me is Carla Litto. She's a no BS licensed therapist with a thriving practice right here in Los Angeles. And she's cutting through the noise to help people break free from toxic relationships. She's also the author of Outsmarting Egomaniacs, a guide to protecting yourself from manipulators, abusers, and con artists. So let's get into it today, you guys. Carla, I'm so excited to have you on today. Thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you. I'm excited to be here.
Yeah, so we're going to have, this is a big topic and I'm really excited to chat about it. I feel like this is something that gets thrown around a lot, especially in like the self-help and the relationship world. Narcissism, right? We hear, oh, he's such a narcissist or she's a narcissist. I think we hear it so often. And I'm excited to sit down and talk to you because I really want to dissect your brain on, what is narcissism and what are the things that we should be looking out for? And also, what are the misconceptions of narcissism? What is love bombing? What are all these things? We hear these words kind of thrown out, but I really want to take the opportunity today to really dive into all of them and to really get an understanding of like, what is this and how do I protect myself against it? Because it can be very damaging if you get wrapped up in a narcissist's world. But first of all, I would love to start before we dive into all that. I'd love to hear a little bit more about you, your background. I know you're a psychologist. You just wrote a fantastic book last year that I listened to. I didn't read, I listened to it and it was really fun. I love your personality. You're hilarious in it. And I love it. She's like, you guys, she's like the no BS psychologist. Like says it how it is, like loved it. So I'd love to hear from you what your practice is like and kind of how you got started and all of it.
Thanks. Yeah, no, I'm glad you liked it. That's definitely what I tried to do is entertain readers to make it easy to understand, easy to read. I'm born and raised in Los Angeles. One of the few natives.
Yeah. Right?
And so you can probably imagine how I got attracted to this field, being born and raised in Los Angeles.
Mm-hmm.
The narcissistic thing was something that I was exposed to very early in my life. And so I was always interested in becoming a therapist. And so I've had a private practice now for close to a decade. And I've been seeing mostly people who are suffering in toxic relationships. It just kind of organically became my jam where like, I think because I know what narcissism really looks like, I was able to help my clients who were being manipulated and abused by a narcissist. So then I realized, wait, there's a book here. I always wanted to write too. And so even before I became a therapist, so I realized with all of the cases I've seen and all of the stories of people I know, my stories, my client stories, I just wanted to kind of help pretty much anyone. Like it doesn't have to be people who know what it is. I wanted to be able to reach people because the thing is when clients come to me, they usually don't know that they're being abused by a narcissist.
Yeah.
They're usually coming and telling me, so I'm in this relationship and this isn't, and that's what's happening. And I'm going, wait a minute. Some people are coming and going, I think he's a narcissist. What do you think? But a lot of people have no idea what's going on. And so I wanted to reach those people so that they understood so that they can understand what things that might be happening to you are healthy and not healthy and how to get yourself out of these toxic relationships and how to know when you're getting manipulated.
Yeah, exactly, and that's why I really wanted to have this conversation because I think, like you said, so many people are getting caught up in it and just not knowing, but deep down feeling like something's not right, right? I think everyone kinda has that gut feeling of, like, something is off here, but they just don't really know what it is and what they're looking for. Um, so I'd love to start off with that, like, what is narcissism?
Yeah. There are so many traits and so much to cover. So I'll just give you a definition from my book, which I think covers everything pretty succinctly.
And what's
Um,
the title of the book?
the title of my book is Outsmarting Egomaniacs:
Yeah.
How to Respond to Narcissists and Master Manipulators.
Yes, love it.
So basically, narcissists are self absorbed, pride protecting, empathy lacking, greed driven individuals who hurt other people to protect their fragile egos and maintain their status as superior, special, or perfect. Trying to hit as many things as I can in those couple
Yeah.
of
No,
lines.
that's great.
There are a lot of traits associated with narcissism.
Yeah, and at the core, like you said, at the core, it really is someone who is really deeply insecure.
Yeah.
But on the outside, they do everything to act as if they're not, but it's all coming, from a deep core wound of usually what is it's like, I'm not enough, I'm not worthy.
Yes.
They just don't feel worthy. And again, this can come, I'm sure, from different backgrounds, how they were raised, all sorts of, and
Right.
yeah.
Right, like you're talking about the misconception, like a lot of one of the biggest misconceptions is that they're confident and they're full of themselves.
Yes.
And like you're saying, it's actually a fragile ego.
Mhm.
It's a deep fear, and shame about who they are. And so what they're doing is trying to mask that. And while they're convincing you of how amazing they are, while they brag and lie about
Mhm.
their accomplishments, they're actually trying to convince themselves.
Mhm.
They're feeding their own narrative. It's for themselves as much as it is for you. So a lot of one of the things that a lot of people ask me is, do they believe their own bullshit? And the answer to that is, I think they're trying to. I think
Mhm.
that
It's like a
I
yes and
think
no.
yes
Yeah.
and no. Yeah, deep down in a place that they'll never touch. They know the truth, but as they're telling you, they're trying to convince themselves. And when they, tell their distorted narrative enough, eventually they do believe it.
Yeah. And what are the big, like, differentiating factors between, let's just say, someone who is full of themselves and
Mm.
someone who is actually a narcissist?
Yeah, that's such a great question because, like I explained in chapter one, it's a spectrum, and there are a lot of narcissistic traits that we all have some of these traits to varying degrees, and I think the biggest distinction is the narcissist's inability to self reflect,
Mhm.
accept criticism, and look at their own behavior.
Mhm.
And so, I mean, a lot of that's part of their lack of empathy. They lack empathy because they can't hold themselves accountable to anything.
Mhm.
So, you can be full of yourself, but then if someone lets you know that you've disappointed them or hurt them, or you have a talk about your relationship, they're able to maybe at least see it or not be so defensive. A narcissist will defend against it so sharply, they'll make you feel ridiculous for even bringing it up. Like they'll put you right back in your place. They won't take anything in. So I think that inability to hold yourself accountable to anything is probably the biggest distinction, 'cause that's why they don't change.
Yeah, so they aren't accountable. They really, really lack empathy. And you can see that in their apologies, right? How does a narcissist apologize?
Yeah. Yeah, so they don't fully apologize. If they
Mhm.
apologize, it's, "Well, sorry you feel that way," or, "Okay, I'm sorry that comment hurt your feelings, but you really, shouldn't be so sensitive. It was a joke," or "You're just too sensitive. I'm sorry that made you feel bad, but, um, you're just too sensitive," or "It was a joke," or "Maybe you didn't get the joke." It's never, that wasn't the right thing to say," or, I wasn't being fair to you."
Yeah.
They never acknowledge what they did. They can acknowledge how it made you feel, but they are
Mhm.
still not sorry for what they did.
And I think that's a huge distinction because I think people will say, well, they did say sorry. But I think if you go back and see how they said sorry, I think for me, this is one of the bigger indicators is like, yeah, exactly the examples you said. I think that's something we really have to really watch for is how are they apologizing? And like you said, do they take accountability? Are they acknowledging that they hurt you? Are they acknowledging
Yeah.
anything that you're bringing up?
In their apology, somehow they're still right and not wrong, but they're
Yes.
sorry.
But they're sorry that you felt that way, but they were still right
Yeah,
in the end, you know?
they're still right. They still didn't do anything wrong though. Yeah.
Yeah. And do you see, like, this is the stuff that I'm like, this is how people get stuck in these cycles. They get
Mhm.
stuck in this, because they're also, really, really clever. So I'd love for you to share kind of, because I think they all kind of have a very similar distinction at the beginning. So let's say you meet someone and you just start dating, right? It's super early in the relationship. What are the characteristics that we often see narcissists have early on in the dating stage?
Yeah, there's a lot of, I mean, they'll talk exclusively about themselves. And there's a lot of bravado and, bragging, showing off. And, a lot of times they even make stuff up. Like they make up accomplishments or exaggerate them.
Hmm.
Um, they'll pretend to be, here in this town, some hotshot producer or whatever.
Yep.
When maybe they're just like unemployed and living in their mom's basement or something, like,
Exactly.
um,
Or really in debt and they think that they have a lot of money, but they're like swimming in
yeah,
it.
yeah, yeah. Um, so they're presenting an image to you that looks very seductive and too good to be true. Um, there's that going on. They're not really listening to you. They're trying to tell you how great they are, but they're not trying to find out about you. That's a big one.
Hmm.
And love bombing is always a possibility. And people talk about that a lot.
Hmm.
And I have an opinion on that.
Ooh, I'd love to
That's a
hear
little
it.
contrary to the
No,
popular one.
I would love to hear it because I also
Yeah.
have I have thoughts on love bombing
Okay.
also. So I would love to hear
Good.
yours.
Okay, great. Yeah. Because yeah, I don't think love bombing necessarily means they're a narcissist. I
Agreed.
think narcissists love bomb, but also so do a lot of other people for a variety of reasons. And so
Agreed.
I don't think if you're getting love bomb, it means he's a narcissist. Run. There are a lot of reasons people love bomb. For example, some people like have a poor filter and they just get
Hmm.
excited. They could have ADHD, they could have love addiction, they could
Hmm.
have none of those things, but also just still have a bad, like not a good filter and
Hmm.
just blurt things out
Yeah.
when they're excited. And I mean, how many times do you just like go home after a date and kick yourself like, why did I bring that up? That was too
Hmm.
soon. It could be a person who really does like you when they're just not good at playing the game or whatever.
100%.
And so I don't think you should just dismiss love bombing, but I think if you have love bombing with all these other things and something in your gut feels off, and if you're asking yourself, I don't know if I should believe him though, pay
Hmm.
attention to that because if your gut doesn't feel like it's genuine, it's probably not.
Oh, absolutely. I think you can really sense it. Like I feel like for me, I've only encountered a narcissist, I'd say a real one time. And like I was sharing with you earlier, it was like textbook case. Like I was like, oh my God, this is what I read about. And it's like happening and it's in front of me. And but it's so true. It's like they often I also find they're often very charming too, initially,
Hmm.
right? They really lure you in with their charm. But I think eventually that cracks because the biggest indicator for me has always been like there's just no interest in you, right? So I think that's a huge differentiating factor with the love bombing. I've been love bombed probably multiple times now, and I feel like they've all been for different reasons.
Hmm.
One, it's like they were insecure and they were like, "Oh my gosh, I just really like this person," and and then I'm like overwhelmed, like, "Okay, whoa, I just wanted to go on a couple dates, I can try to get to know you," and they're like, "You're my
Yeah.
wife," and I'm like,
Yeah.
okay, again, not a
Yeah.
narcissist, was very engaging, wanted to get to know me, right? They're all in it, and
A lot of
sometimes,
times
yeah,
yeah, like, people like, a lot of times people are looking for a relationship, and, when they meet someone they really like, they get really excited that maybe this person can be the one,
yeah,
and they see them with, like, rose-colored
yep.
glasses, and, it's not that they're a narcissist, they're just really excited to meet
Yeah.
someone who might fit the criteria of what they're looking for. Women do that too.
Oh,
Except
100%.
we're told we have to like keep it in or, let the man chase you. But men know they're supposed to pursue. So sometimes they kind of just are transparent in this experience they have of like, oh my God, this girl's it. And so if he seems like a nice guy, I don't think it means you're getting love bombed by a narcissist.
Yeah.
Just see what else goes on.
Yeah, absolutely. It's like if there's genuine interest, is he trying to get to know you? Is he asking questions? Is there some
Mhm.
genuine like he really is showing up for you, right? He's not just like, oh, and buy you flowers and do all the stuff, but like at the end of the day, he doesn't even know your favorite color, like basic things.
Right.
Like he hasn't asked you anything about your life. He doesn't really care. And that's what I noticed with that person that I had been seeing. It was very short lived, thank the Lord. But it was so much of that. I was like, wow, you like I would notice I would bring stuff I would start to talk about myself, and then I'd get the glazed over look, like the looking but and I'm like, "Hello? Like, anyone there? You just talked about yourself for 45 minutes straight that I had to listen to, and now I'm trying to
Yeah.
chime in, and you got nothing." Like,
Yeah. Yeah.
oh
He's like, "Ooh, it's not about me anymore. I'm bored."
exactly. He's like, "Oh, this isn't my thing anymore." So, I think those are
Yeah.
kind of really big telling things and that's why like I think with love bombing, I think there's moments of worry. Yeah, it can be incredibly frustrating because I think at the extreme of love bombing, you get like just overwhelmed with affection and everything and then they just kind of leave and ghost you and then you're like, what just happened? Um, but then there's also the guy that just again can't control his emotions and can't control his excitement and kind of goes a little bit overboard, right? A little bit
Yeah.
overboard.
Yep.
Um,
Yep.
but what are some manipulative tactics that narcissists use that you start to see? Because I think like I said, I think you mentioned this in your book too. Kind of early on, they're a lot more. They're charming. They're really painting the picture of themselves. Like I think I loved about your book is you really laid out like kind of the process the narcissist goes through, and this is kind of where I think you can kind of catch things a little bit early on, but initially
Mhm.
charming, very much telling you a story you thinking, "Oh my god, this is too good to be true. Who is this guy? He's got all these
Mhm.
things." And obviously, I'm speaking from about a guy. This could also be the same for a female, right? A guy could
Right.
be a
Absolutely.
female. So
Mhm.
by all means, keep this in mind when I'm saying this. I'm speaking from my perspective. But
Right.
but like that initially, they're really selling you on this story. But when
Mhm.
when do they really start showing their colors? Where the charm wears off a little bit, and we
When
start to
they
see a little bit more of like the true narcissism.
when they have you,
Mm.
when they're comfortable, when they're settling into their relationship, especially when they think now she's not going anywhere or he. And so, what you'll see is kind of that gaslighting that we were talking about earlier, where they won't be accountable to any of their behavior. Probably one of the most common, biggest, and most annoying things they do is the playing the victim.
Mm.
And so as soon as they're called out, not only are they defensive or they might get angry or defensive or tell you what you saw and heard isn't true. They
Mhm,
do all that. But also if they can't be the hero or like the number one most amazing person, then they're the victim.
mhm,
Then they're the victim in the story. And so it's like they've done they're doing things that aren't right, and when you wanna talk about it with them, somehow they're the victim in this story and not so that you can't be, so that they don't have
mhm,
to be accountable to their behavior. So, the self-victimization and you'll see it, when they talk about other people too, like
mhm,
their family, their parents, their siblings, their boss, all these people who make them be accountable and they're mad about it. It's like, pay attention to the story because sometimes their version is not reality. And
mhm.
so you want to, if this keeps happening, if they're the common denominator in all these stories about, my family's sick of my shit and now my boss is firing me. And it looks like, wow, a lot of people, this person has trouble with a lot of people. That's something you want to pay attention to because, you might be next, basically.
Honestly, and I feel like they really do if you listen enough and quiet down, I feel like they really do give you a lot of information, and you start putting it back here. Like, I had this guy tell me once, he was like, "Oh, well, I know how to, talk to people to get them to do what I want." And I'm like,
Mm.
Okay, in normal conversation, you may not, but like something about that just did not sit right with me. And I was like,
Yeah.
I just chalked it back here. I was like, I'm gonna save that for later. Because that ended up
Yeah.
being really telling. It was like, oh, I'm gonna evoke emotion. I'm gonna evoke a certain, to get them to do what I want them to do. And that's essentially
That's
manipulation.
what
I mean,
that's what manipulation is.
yeah, like
Yeah.
at the end of the day, I'm like, huh, you're good at doing that, aren't you? Thank you for letting me know early. And so it's so wild to watch it too, how they act and how, because it is very apparent. I feel like once you know, when you see the signs,
Mhm.
you can't unsee it. Like you start to
Right.
see and then again, the manipulation is where you start to see the cracks, because if you start to question them on things, like they will turn it around on you. And that's also one of the pieces that I felt like was really telling for me with this person was, it's like if anything was kind of brought up in the conversation, at somehow an hour into it, we're like still talking. Then it's like, oh, well, you didn't validate me or you didn't say something. So now this is actually, and man, I'm telling you, after an hour, you really get caught up in that conversation. And you're like, wait, how is this on me now? And it's
Yeah.
wild if you aren't strong enough mentally to like see that, like, wait a second, I actually didn't do anything in this situation, it really can
Yeah.
be damaging.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I feel like they're just kind of conniving.
Yeah. Yeah. They're manipulative. Yeah.
Yeah. Can you share kind of, I'm curious to from your perspective, like what are some real life examples, maybe from like past clients or things that like they were so clever that they were hard to kind of uncover initially. Like I want people to be able to kind of go out there, and as they meet people and date, like to kind of be more aware of like what to look for kind of early on, and kind of using real life examples.
Of dating, like, or just kind of
Yeah,
like,
even dating, like for
feeling manipulated in your marriage.
yeah, I would say dating, because we're kind of more in that realm, but like early on in dating.
Yeah.
Like you're going on a first date, like what are the things you watch out for?
Yeah, I have more examples of people wanting to end their marriages with a narcissist
Mm.
because they're starting to finally see it, but they've been feeling like, well, maybe it's me.
Yeah.
Um, and you'll see that victimization thing. Like, for example, I have a client whose husband tells her she's the problem and she's the narcissist because she yells. But when she finally yells, she's so exasperated
Mm.
by a guy who's like on the golf course drinking all day
Mm.
and while she's working and then comes home um and like doesn't do anything to help with the kids and like passes out
Mm.
on the living room floor and like
Jeez.
she's putting the kids to bed, she's working, but yeah, and then she's pissed and she's like, I need, and she like sometimes she just loses it because there's so much pressure.
Yeah.
And he's like, yeah, you have a temper, and the reason we don't get along is you have a temper. And then he's telling all their friends and family, like, she has a temper and that's why we're getting divorced and she abuses me. And
Oh
she's
gosh.
divorcing him because he's a deadbeat dad, alcoholic, like, you know what I mean? So,
Yeah.
but that's a great way to just be like, well, the problem is you. So one of the things that they'll do is they'll weaponize your reaction. So they'll, in this case, he's in a self-absorbed little bubble, but sometimes
Yeah.
they're just push, 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 provoke, 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 and they get a rise out of you, and they're like, see, look how crazy and out of control you are. You're the
So
problem.
yeah.
You're the problem.
So infuriating.
That's
So
why in my book I stress all the time, stop getting pulled into these like arguments with them. Don't engage. When they lose their when they're not making sense anymore and when they're abusive, just the conversation's over. It's
yeah.
over.
Yeah. Because they'll just it just keeps going in this vicious cycle.
Mhm.
But if you don't play into it, it kind of like in a way that it bores them. They're like, well, dang, I'm not getting what I normally get out of you.
Right. That's all they want. So if you just stop playing along, they can't manipulate
They
you.
can't manipulate you. So who are narcissists most attracted to? Like, because I feel like sometimes they have a type.
Yeah, well, I mean, they love empaths and caretakers and codependents, people pleasers, and those are all kind of like synonyms for each other with
Yeah.
some subtle nuances. But they like people that they can control and manipulate. And so if you're somebody who either, doesn't like confrontation, and so you'll go with the flow and you people please, great, then they can always have their way.
Mm-hmm.
If you're um passive or submissive and comfortable letting someone else dominate, great. They're always in control. So if you're naive and you've never seen anyone like this and come from your sweet, amazing family, and you've had nice friends in your small town, and then, you know, you meet someone like this for the first time, you're caught unaware. So they like people who um either I mean, for the most part, just don't take care of themselves and want to take
Mm-hmm.
care of somebody else. People pleasers who still believe, like, I want to be a nice person.
Mm-hmm.
I don't want to feel like I feel bad. And so they'll use guilt and play the victim. And the person who wants to be nice will feel like they can't take a stand or stick up for themselves because they don't want to let this person down. And someone who's afraid of confrontation, for sure.
It's like the gold star for them. They're like, great.
Mhm. Those
And
people are awesome. Yeah.
yeah, and probably people who have, like, maybe less self-esteem, maybe they don't feel as good
Mhm.
about themselves, and because I feel like early on what
Yes.
they do is they try to actually pump you up first. They're like, "You're amazing." That's what I found with the person that I was seeing. It was like initially it was like I was the amazing one. They're like, "Oh," I'm like, "But," I think that was early on. I was like, "But you don't really know me. How do you know that I'm
Mhm.
so what if I suck?" Like, I don't
Right.
know. Like, you
Right.
don't fully.
Right.
And I think someone with maybe a lower self-esteem who's having someone that's just like, "Oh my god, you're amazing. How are you
Yeah.
single?" Like, really
Yeah.
pumping them up. It's like they pump them up just to let them down eventually.
Right.
It's not.
Someone who
Mhm,
needs something so that they can come through and give them that thing. So someone who has financial problems or is unemployed, someone who's kind of like a mess in some way so that they can come in and rescue and then be in control of their life. There's that. And people who are obsessed with status in some way because they'll
mhm,
use that. hmm
mhm.
Um, but anyone insecure or vulnerable in some way, you know, that's the jackpot for that.
Yeah, they really, really, like, latch on to that. And then it kinda makes them the hero, which again only just completes the cycle of, like, they're amazing because they've, like, now rescued you.
Yeah, that's what they want. I've seen that,
Yeah.
narcissists who prey on people who are unemployed and
Interesting.
in financial trouble, like using, like, I can hook you up. I know people. I know the right people. I'm so well connected. And it's not, they're not spending money on this person necessarily. They don't have to. It's, I'm going to get you, a job, or, in this town, it's, I can find you, get you in the entertainment biz or whatever it is. Um, it's someone who needs something, and then they dangle that carrot and
Mhm.
like they have it, so that that person becomes dependent on them.
Oh, yeah. What's crazy? This makes me think of I actually interviewed for a job with someone that I was like, this dude has to be a narcissist because it
How
was it
so?
was because he started off very like it honestly was similar to this guy that I dated, but he started off very like, I think you'd be an amazing candidate. Like he was like, I'm like, wait, but you haven't really interviewed me much. Like it was very strange. It was like
Mm,
I feel he was trying to tell me what I wanted, and a lot of it was like he's like, "I feel like you would do really well if you had some sort of mentor, or if you had like, oh, I'm really well connected, like I feel like you would want more freedom in this role." Like basically telling me all the things I would want in a
that's
role.
interesting.
It was
That
very
sounds like a guy. Yeah, that sounds like someone who really wants to fill that position and is selling you on it. Like they're desperate to get that position filled. And so instead of seeing if you're the right candidate, they're
yeah.
trying to convince you to take it because they want to fill the position.
But it
That's
was
what that
weird.
sounds like to me.
Yeah, well,
Yeah.
it was weird because he was going on about that, and then he was going on about how, like, how amazing he was in the company and how he built it. It was just like it kept going on, and then he set me up with, like, and everything was very quick. It's like, "I want you to interview with these 3 people," like, it was very quick. Then to, like, nothing. It was like, didn't respond to emails, didn't I don't know, it was some gut feeling I just had about how he was talking about
Yeah.
himself and all of that. It was
Yeah.
just interesting. I just had all these red flags, like, going off in the moment.
Yeah. It
And
sounds scammy. It sounds kind of
yeah,
scammy.
it was
Yeah.
very, like, and then just how he spoke about himself and, like, I don't know, there was something about it, I was like, he
Mhm.
could or could not be, but, like, it was just you start to just see some of these patterns of how they're saying, how they're speaking, that just is, like, really I don't know, it's
Yeah.
just really, like, telling. It made me feel like he put because I interviewed with a bunch of people, and everyone that I interviewed with all had interesting, weird things to say about him. Kind of
Yeah.
like a little bit of an egomaniac, I'm not gonna lie. That's kind of the sense I got from
Yeah.
all of his employees, and then how he even structured, like, the interview, like, wanted to sign an NDA even though he never sent anything in for any, like, important information. It was just the whole thing. I was like, "You sound kind of like you could be one," like,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
interview perspective, which was so weird because I've only really ever thought about it from, like, a perspective of, like, dating. But sometimes you encounter these people, like, everywhere. Your family,
Yeah.
family members, it could be bosses at work, coworkers, like,
Mhm.
it's not just in the dating world, and that was the one of the first times I was like, "Wait a second, like, this just feels really off."
Yeah. Narcissists are everywhere.
They, like, literally
They're
are.
everywhere.
They're literally everywhere. I feel like we just have to be, like, mindful of, like it's almost like how do we, it's like we have to protect ourselves in them because 'cause we're not gonna change them, right? There's nothing we can really do to, like, drastically change them. But what are some key things that, like that we can do to kind of protect ourselves from their games and from their schemes?
Right. I mean, with everyone, and especially with narcissists, you want to set boundaries very early on. You don't want to be stuck in a position where you let someone walk all over you and then later you're trying to like stick up for yourself and tell them how it's going to be and they're not going to believe you because they have a history of being able to have their way with you. So, it's really important to set boundaries with people early on. And I mean, it can be really simple things. It doesn't have to be like a big deal. It's um boundaries are really just kind of like you being honest with yourself and with other people about what you need and then staying true to your values so that when a narcissist comes along and kind of like tries to push and manipulate you in a different way, you're so connected to your sense of self and your values that that doesn't work. And then you can actually see what they're doing and you can actually see when someone's not listening to you and disrespecting you and just pushing their own agenda.
Yeah, I think that's gosh, I feel like that's so key in life in general. Is like
Mhm.
you just have to be so solid in who you are and what you want and what your values are that like
Yes.
you start to see when things are incongruent. You start to see it in other people. You see when people aren't aligned with you. Um
Mm,
and I think that that's so important in like so many areas of our life. So many when you think about work,
right,
friendships, family, all that.
right, right. Developing your confidence is probably your biggest protector, which is why I have a whole chapter devoted to building confidence because um, the more confident you are,
Mm.
the less of an ability they have to manipulate you, the less fuck withable you are,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah, and the less value you place on them, the less value you place on how they
Mhm.
treat you. I just had someone in, my DMs, and it was so heartbreaking because he was just saying how, like, he feels he's like, "I feel like I'm never gonna be good enough," because it's like, he was sharing a video of a girl who's like, "I just ghosted a guy, and, like, look what he wrote," I guess he wrote this, like, long 5-page paragraph back to her. I was like, "Okay, that was a little extreme," but first of all, the fact that you ghosted isn't great, but anyway, he just said he's like, "See, this is examples of, like, why I feel like guys are never gonna win, we're, like, never good enough," and that just broke my heart because I was like, having confidence in who you are can save you so much heartbreak in so many areas of life. Like, you no longer like someone ghosts you, I'm out, you're not my type, goodbye. Like, it's not about,
Mhm.
oh, I'm not good enough, they don't like me. That you stop getting into that pity party and you
Right,
start realizing that is
right,
information, right? Someone ghosting you is information, right? Someone being manipulative toward you is a
right.
manipulation. Someone not taking accountability, great. I have more information now about you. And it's like I really just want people as we're out there dating, as we're meeting new people. It's like I just feel like we have to look at that as like that defines more of who they are than it defines who we are.
Absolutely. Right. Confidence is about knowing your worth so that it's not about getting people to like you. It's about
Mhm.
being okay whether they like you or not.
Yes.
And so when someone rejects you, it's not a measure of your worth. That's about them and they're not for you. And that gives you more of an opportunity to find who is for you.
Absolutely. Gosh, and I just want that for more people, because it's like people will always ask me like, "Oh, how should I date?" or like ask me like dating questions, and I'm like, "You're kind of missing the point. Like it's not the dating questions that's the problem. It's the who are you? Are you dating with confidence? Are you dating in your own integrity? Are you dating people that meet that integrity? Or your values or things like that? Like that's what it's about more. And it's like that's what I try to emphasize more is like that part of people versus like the like tactics and, because all those
Yeah.
don't matter if you're not aligned with yourself.
Right. They want to know like what questions they should ask on a date. Is that what
Yes.
you mean?
Yeah. They're just,
Mm,
yeah, they ask like, should I be on the app or should I do, it's like, I get the sentiment behind it, but I often find like, that's like not the important part. The important part is everything before that.
right, right. What matters is how you see yourself and how you approach the situation. It doesn't matter if you're dating on an app or speed dating or
Exactly.
your neighbor sets you up. It's feeling like you have value and your job is to find out if this person is somebody you want and if they recognize your value. And that's it. It's not about how am I going to get them to like me.
Hmm.
It's
That's
it's
irrelevant.
right. It's finding out who they are and if they're right for you
Yeah.
first. And then is there a
Absolutely.
connection? Yeah.
Yeah, like that's so, and that's again, that's how we guard ourselves against people that are narcissists or people that are egomaniacs or people that just generally
Right.
don't care for us. Like they usually are giving us all the information we really need to know pretty early on. But
Right.
we're often too focused, like you said, on like, does he like me? Am I good enough? Am I, like
That's exactly what a narcissist preys on
hundred
is
percent.
you like feeling like you need to be good enough and make them happy and that's how they use that's how they guilt you. If you're not interested in impressing them and you're interested in finding out about their character first,
Hmm.
they're not going to be able to manipulate you.
They are
That
not.
really depends on the focus.
Yeah. And that's usually when they'll leave.
Right. If
They will
they
exit
figure
the
out,
chat.
we were talking about this earlier, if they
Yeah.
figure out that you're onto them, that's when they disappear. Like sometimes them disappearing is a good sign. It means
Yeah.
that they see that you're not someone they can manipulate. So good. You
You're like,
dodged a bullet.
yeah, you're like,
Yay.
"Thank you, sir. Appreciate you
Yeah.
you just leaving and I don't have to deal with you anymore." It's like a
Yeah.
gift. But, what happens with like I think you mentioned this too in your book and which is so hard. It's like you're now married to one, right? You've been together for a long time and you obviously didn't see the signs early on. They have now really torn up your self-confidence at this point. Um, how do you even handle that? Like I can't imagine it if I'm already in a marriage with somebody and trying
Mhm.
to navigate day-to-day life and I know that's kind of your clientele base, but um walk me through like how does someone exit that or deal with that or
Right.
recover from that?
Right. So usually they come in still not really knowing if they want to leave.
Mm,
And they're questioning themselves.
mm.
And And that's really all I have to work with is them, like what they
Yeah.
have control over and who they are if they're coming in individual therapy, which is usually the case.
Yeah.
And so what I'm working with them on is what they can actually do.
Mhm.
And that's different. Like what they have control over themselves, not him.
Yeah.
So usually it's about assertiveness training and how to be like self-empowered and interpersonally effective and I help them see that the way that they've been handling conflict with this person has only been inflaming the situation because that's
Mhm.
usually the case. They're fighting with them and it's going nowhere. They're being gaslit and they feel the narcissist doesn't listen to them and
Mhm.
so, you know, they approach the interaction in a different way. And that gives them the ability to see the other person also in a different way. So while the other person isn't necessarily changing, that's kind of the point. It's like
Mhm.
here they are doing this healthy thing, and the other person isn't catching up. And that's usually when my clients kind of like lose interest or decide that they're done because they're stepping into the relationship with more confidence
Mm.
and seeing their bad behavior, as opposed to being in the relationship tolerating their bad behavior with no confidence, feeling like it's their fault. So when they start to kind of understand that it's manipulation and understand that their behavior, their mistreatment of them is abuse and not fair, and then they learn how to handle it, and they handle it from that place of self-worth and self-empowerment, and, setting boundaries and detaching from their reaction and not
Mhm.
getting pulled um into the fight with them. They're able to see them. They go from seeing them as like this king that they want to please
Mhm.
to suddenly an emotionally immature toddler in a man's body. If
Yeah.
they see that. Um, and they're like, yeah, I don't want this. And I see that they won't change, and they see what a healthy dynamic should look like, and it can't happen, and it doesn't happen. And that's usually when they're done, and then they walk away. Then they're ready to leave. And they're leaving with confidence instead of like the scared bunny rabbit who's
Mhm.
trying to please an impossible person and feeling worthless because they can't. And when you're in that state, you don't leave. When you're in that phase,
Mhm.
you don't leave because you're
No.
stuck trying to make them happy, because you don't realize that it's not you, that they'll never be pleased, that they're disordered, and it's not your
Mhm.
fault. Once they understand that and start to um, feel their self empowerment, they lose interest in trying to maintain that toxic relationship on their own.
Yeah. And because they can't either. And even I feel like even the narcissist can't at that point. They're like, dang, like all my tactics are no longer working. It's their what do
Right.
they reference it? Don't they call it like narcissist supply? Like the
Yes,
supply of
yeah.
yeah.
That's something that happens too, is that like sometimes the narcissist will dump
Mhm.
person who's hating in their bullshit.
Yeah.
Right? Like, or like when you've called them out and you have that like when you have evidence or whatever, and it's so shaming to the narcissist that they will completely back away. Like they
Mm.
don't even want to they don't want anything to do with you, because they know that you caught them,
Mhm.
and they can't restore their image. They can't do all the things that they do anymore in front of you. So
Mhm.
you're no longer a person they can fool and manipulate. So they don't want anything to do with you.
Yeah. And then they make it easy. Then they
And then
just
they leave.
easier, I would say, because there's obviously still heartbreak and especially for somebody who's been with if they've been together for, a long period of time. And how does someone like rebuild from that? Like how when you work with your clients, like
Mm,
what are steps that people can take? Um, I think when they're maybe on the other side, but still dealing with the damage from it.
yeah. Yeah, it's really important to surround yourself with a healthy, supportive
Mhm.
circle. So I encourage them to practice their boundary setting and their healthy communication with other healthy people,
Mhm.
so that they can experience that reparative um, experience of setting a boundary and realizing that it's safe,
Yeah.
and realizing that people respect your boundaries, so that they know what it looks like when you have like a reciprocal relationship of, when you can mutually understand each other, and two people get along because they care about each other and how each other feels, instead of this one way imbalanced dynamic. And the more they can experience those kinds of interactions, the more safe they feel
Mhm.
with other people. Also, I feel like anyone who's experienced narcissistic abuse and goes to therapy and like, or at
Mhm.
least understands that that's what happened,
Mhm.
becomes the kind of person with the antenna who can see it coming because they just experienced it.
Yeah.
If it's happening over and over and over again, if all your relationships, this is happening in all of your relationships, you're probably not like developing the self-awareness and
Mhm.
seeing like what it looks like and what part do you play in it and why is this happening. But when you look at those pieces, it's so easy to see it happen again
Mhm.
once you're familiar with it.
Yeah, I feel like you can spot it a mile away, and sometimes you might not spot it right away because they're clever and cunning and,
Mhm.
initially, I think the person that I was, it was very interesting because he spoke the self-help talk. He was super into self-help, super into
Mhm.
all that. So initially I'm like,
A lot of
"Oh
them
my"
are.
Which isn't that so fascinating? Because someone else that I felt that had tendencies was also really into like self-development and like, what is that? How, like, they get so
Right.
into that and they can speak to that language.
Well, narcissists love projection.
Mm.
And because I think narcissism is becoming such a hot topic, they're learning the language to weaponize their victims with,
Yes.
I think,
Yeah.
because, 10 years ago, I never heard of narcissists calling other narcissists a narcissist.
Hmm.
But today, narcissists love to accuse other people of being the narcissist because they're starting to find out that their victims are realizing they're narcissists. So, what better preemptive strike than to call you the narcissist?
Oh, a
So that,
100%.
right?
Or they
So,
were like, "Oh, all my exes were so manipulative," or all my it's always interesting to hear them talk about their exes too, because I feel like a lot of their own traits tend to come up when they talk about.
yeah, yeah. When people have the same type of crazy ex, it's like all their exes were
Mhm.
crazy, or um, you want to like think about, were they all crazy? Because maybe you're the common denominator here,
Exactly.
right. So either way, it's not good if
Yeah.
all of their exes were crazy, because either it means that they're projecting crazy onto their exes because they're crazy, or
Mhm.
they're the kind of person who hasn't done the work where they're vulnerable to
Mhm.
disturbed people. And that means they're not healthy or stable themselves. So either way,
It's not
that's
good.
not good to
You're like,
have a whole parade of crazy exes. Like, no.
yeah, no, exactly. And like I said, it's all telling with how they speak about it. But I think it's just that being mindful of like they may actually be using the language of someone who is potentially healed, but they're using it on top of all this other stuff. They're still manipulative. They're still talking about themselves like being the best thing the earth has ever seen. So it's just that's where I feel like people because I think that's where it got me initially. I was like, wow, like you're like this developed person, like crazy, like and
Yeah.
they get you in that way. And it was like, for me, it was a light bulb and why I wanted to have this conversation because I was like, that could be really damaging because they're using probably if someone's healed and going through this work, they're using that type of language. So it sounds like they are more important than they really are, or they know more than they really do. And so yeah, it was just one of those kind of it was kind of scary. I was like, God, they can even
Yeah.
sound healed, you know?
Yeah. Well, they learn what the right things to say are. I mean, they're just, a full blown narcissist. It's just a big time scammer, you
Yeah.
know?
Yeah.
So
And a
they
lot of
know all the things to say.
they know all the right things to say. So it's
Mhm.
it's super crazy. But any other final thoughts you want to share from your book that you want to leave with our listeners or anything? I feel like we've covered a lot today.
We covered a lot. Yeah. Gosh, what final thing do I want to share?
If nothing, no worries. Even where we can find your book, where we can find
Yeah.
you, if anyone wants to work with you, because I feel like
Yeah.
if someone is going through this and they want a trusted source, or they
Yes.
feel like someone's a narcissist in their life, and they might be in a relationship with somebody, yeah, where can they find you? Because I feel
Yeah.
like you are a great trusted source with something like this, very experienced in it.
Thank you. Yeah, my website, carlalitotherapy.com, has all the ways that you can reach me, and you can follow me on Instagram
Mhm.
at Carla Litto Therapy. And my book is available everywhere. So it's Amazon, there's the Kindle, there's the audiobook, and it's also available on bookstores. And if you buy your books from a website other than Amazon, whatever that is, it's
Mhm.
most likely there too. So it's available everywhere books are sold. So
Awesome. Well,
yeah.
thank you so much, Carla. I really appreciate your time. Um, just to have this conversation that I feel like is so needed today. Again, I feel like this word is thrown out so much, but there's actually so much weight to it that I actually really want to encourage people to just not call everyone a narcissist. Like, I feel like we've really got to get away from that. And so I hope that this
Right.
episode kind of gives people a little bit of distinction and a little bit of light towards someone who might be dealing with it.
Right. Absolutely.
So awesome. Well, thank you so much for your time. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thanks.